Hello, and welcome to Space Engineers. In this tutorial, we will cover the basics of Space Engineers, showing what you'll need to do to get started in survival. One of the first things you'll obviously need to do is purchase the game. As with all games, Space Engineers has DLCs. All the DLCs are cosmetic and add a couple of blocks and textures that you don't actually require. I'd recommend you play the game first before deciding whether or not you want to purchase DLCs. Once you've got past the horrifically loud intro video, go to New Game, Custom Game, scroll right down to the bottom and click Star System. The star system is the default start in Space Engineers. I don't know why it's at the bottom of the list, don't ask me, but this is what most people will be using, this is what most servers will be using, and this is probably the easiest way to learn the game. If you set this setting to private or friends, you can allow your friends to join your game if you want to play a small game without having to pay for a dedicated server. I wouldn't recommend this to begin with, but you can also add mods and change the settings of your world from these buttons here. You can still add mods and change the settings of your world later, so for now I will leave them as the default. Once the game is loaded, you'll be brought to this screen. I'd recommend you start on the Earth-like planet because it has high oxygen and normal amount of gravity. While other planets like Triton and Pertam have normal amounts of oxygen, they have other factors that make them more difficult. For the purpose of this tutorial, we will be starting on Earth. Once you've picked the place you'd like to spawn, press respawn. And you'll be put onto the ship. If you press V, you can view your ship in third person, and if you press Alt, you can move the camera freely. Pressing V to reset the position and also switch back to first person. I wouldn't recommend you press anything, as you can see there, because your parachute will open automatically and we don't want to mess up that process. Just wait until your ship lands on the planet and then we can begin. Unfortunately, the mountain we landed on isn't quite flat, so none of the landing gears lock to the surface of the planet. But this is fine, our pod's still here, we can still access everything we need. But if your pod does get damaged in the landing, I would recommend you respawn. The first thing you notice when you land on a planet is you have a series of things on your interface on the left. From top to bottom, these are health, oxygen, energy, and hydrogen. As you can see, my energy is already ticking down, as the energy will be used when you run around to keep you warm and when you use tools such as the welder, grinder, and drill. Speaking of which, you have the hotbar in the middle. On here, you'll have a series of tools and blocks you can use. To start with, we'll need the drill. You can use the drill to mine the surface. Whilst you can mine dirt, it yields less resources than actually mining the stone itself, so we'll start by mining the stone. If you left click with the drill, it will slowly mine the surface of the planet and drop these rocks. You want to pick up these rocks, as you'll need to put them in your ship in a second. You pick up these rocks by looking at them and pressing F. Go back to our ship, you see you have this yellow square on your ship. You want to press F on that to access the inventory. You want to click the stone in your inventory and drag it into the survival kit. You can see the survival kit has a maximum weight of 1,000 litres, and the stone I've just put in is half of that weight. So if I were to mine more than the stone that I can fit in here, it wouldn't fit in, it would stay in my inventory. Once you've placed the stone in the inventory, if you go to production, you can see all the blocks on your ship that can produce items. The only one we have at the moment is the survival kit. In order to start building in Space Engineers, you'll need steel plates. As you can see, we lack iron to build steel plates. However, we can convert the stone we just mined into a multitude of resources by building ingots. As you can see, some of the stone was converted into gravel, nickel, and silicon. If you hold Control, you can queue up 10 of a recipe. If you hold Shift, you can queue up 100. And if you hold Control and Shift, you can queue up 1,000. I'd recommend you queue up a few thousand ingots. The recipe won't craft if you don't have any stone anyway, so this will convert all of your stone into ingots. As you can see, our one steel plate has been crafted. If you go back to inventory and drag this steel plate across, we'll then be able to build our first block in Space Engineers. By pressing 4, you can see I have a block. However, this is a small block, so if you press 4 again, or R, this will convert it into a large ship block. We want to place this large block in the world in order to start building our base. I'd recommend somewhere flat, but as my ship is stuck here, I'm just going to build here for now. As you can see, I've placed the block and it's left the frame of the block. This frame will need to be welded up. As you can see on the right, very faintly, you can see it requires 25 steel plates to weld this block up. However, I'd recommend you don't weld these blocks up, as the functionality of a light armor block is just cosmetic. However, for the purpose of demonstration, I'm going to do it for this tutorial. If you right click on a block that isn't welded up with your welder in hand, it will add components to your build planner. If you press G, it will show all the items that you can build, and also on the right hand side, you have a build planner. As I've queued a light armor block, you can see it was queued 24 steel plates, as that's what is needed to complete this light armor block. If we, for example, want to queue up more light armor blocks, we could right click to add another one to our queue, or we could click up here and middle click on light armor, or we could drag it to the build planner from here. If we now go over to our ship and go to any of the yellow connection points on the ship and press shift middle click, this will put everything from the build planner into the production queue on the ship. As you can see, we were able to build 4 more steel plates, but the other additional 94 steel plates couldn't be crafted because we ran out of iron. Back down the mines I go. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a red bar. That red bar is your inventory capacity. When it starts to get red, that means it's full. Once I've taken the stone out of my inventory and put it into the survival kit, you'll see the bar goes back to blue and not covering as much of the screen. The production queue obviously goes in the order that they are in from left to right. If I drag the steel plates to the front, it will craft these steel plates first before it turns the stone into ingots. Now that I've run out of iron, it's now crafting more ingots from the stone. If you middle click on any connector, it will draw all the components it can to build anything in your build queue. As you can see, I currently haven't crafted enough steel plates to fully weld up this block. As we seem to have landed behind a mountain, it may be useful to press L to turn on the lights on your suit. Whilst this will drain more energy, it will allow you to see in the dark. As I finally finish welding up this steel armor block, you'll see at the bottom of the screen that new blocks are added to our progression. If you press G, progression is at the top. This will show you the blocks you need to build to unlock other blocks. If you scroll down the list to light armor, you can see that by building a light armor block, I've unlocked rounded armor. If there's ever anything you want to build, but you don't have it in your list of blocks, by pressing the search at the top, you can see what you have to build first in order to unlock it. For example, if I want to unlock thrusters, I have to build a landing gear, then anything in this list here, probably a seat would be the easiest, and anything in this list here of cockpits, and after I've built a cockpit, I then will unlock thrusters, Gatling weapons, gyros, and ship tools. You don't have to build these items from scratch, all you have to do is weld up an item that's functional to unlock this research. During my mining expedition, I got stuck. However, there is an easy way to get out of this. If you press X on your keyboard, you'll activate your jetpack. By pressing space, you'll slowly be moved up in the air, and pressing C to go down again. Pressing X will turn your jetpack off again. You can use the arrow keys to control yourself in all directions. Be careful you don't go down too fast or move into something too fast, like a mountain, as you will kill yourself. However, when you die, you'll respawn at your survival kit and you'll be given a GPS location of your body. The first thing to do when building your base would be get power onto the base. The easiest power source in the beginning of the game is the wind turbine. You will start on it on your hotbar, but if you for some reason removed it, press G, go to the top, search wind turbine, and drag it down onto your hotbar. I put it on number 7, which means it's on number 7. Now wind turbines, as you can imagine, need wind, which means they need to be high. Using your jetpack by pressing X, I would slowly go up, build a tower of blocks. I'm out of blocks, but I think this should be high enough for my wind turbine anyway. By pressing G, then searching wind turbine, then middle clicking on wind turbine, I've added wind turbine to my production queue. As you can see, it requires 2 computers, 24 girders, construction components, motors, and interior plates. By going to my production tab, I'm going to cancel the steel plates that are currently in there, and then I'm going to shift middle click to queue only the components I need. As you can see, I'm going to have to do some more mining, but that is the beginning of this game, unfortunately. As you can see in the bottom left, my hydrogen is at 43%. By going to the survival kit on your ship, which is this little screen here, by pressing F, you'll slowly refill all of your needs in the bottom left. You can also, if you go to the O2 generator on this side of your ship, pressing F on the yellow connector, you can pull out a hydrogen bottle, and if you're in space, there is also an oxygen bottle. This hydrogen bottle will basically fill up your hydrogen as you fly around until it runs out. Oxygen would do the same. You also have ice in here. Ice is what powers the O2 H2 generator. It will generate oxygen and hydrogen to store on your ship. This is all the ice you have. Once you've run out, you'll have no jetpack fuel, and you'll have no oxygen if you're in space. So ice would be one of the first resources you would need to go out and get if you were in space. However, as we're on Earth, we don't need to worry too much about ice because there is an oxygen atmosphere. It should also be noted that if you press J, it will open up your helmet, which will allow you to breathe the atmosphere and not waste oxygen if you're in an environment that has oxygen. I've placed the initial blueprint of my wind turbine. However, I have nowhere near enough resources to weld it up, and I also do not have the stone to weld it up. There is a way I can expedite this process. As my ship has crashed, as long as I don't remove any of the vital components like the battery, the survival kit, and the O2 generator, I should be able to grind down components on this ship using the grinder to weld up my wind turbine. I'm going to grind off the landing gear, because they haven't worked, and use the components from the landing gear to weld up my wind turbine. I'm also hoping that this will land the ship flat, which it did. That's good. I'm also going to grind off these thrusters because I don't currently need them, and I'd much rather have my base set up than this. Your inventory fills up while you're grinding down a ship. The items will drop on the floor, so I'd recommend you keep an eye on that, not to waste resources. As you can see, I can't grind down the last thruster because my inventory will be full. I'm going to fly up and I'm going to weld up this wind turbine. Fortunately, wind turbines don't seem to use a lot of the components that are on my ship. When grinding down all the parts of my ship, my inventory has become quite full, so I need somewhere to store it. If you press F on any connector on the ship and click the square, it will show any blocks that are connected to this block that I'm connected to. So I'm currently pressed F on this survival kit, and on this ship there are other blocks that are connected to, such as a small cargo container. By ticking on the container on the left, I can then shift click resources into there. However, this is a small cargo container, so it can't carry very much, only 125 litres. For now, I'm going to put my stuff back in the survival kit. As you can see, with the last middle click, all components were successfully withdrawn, and my wind turbine is now complete. Power transfers through blocks to any part on the grid, even these unassembled blocks, which means anything now connected to this grid will now have power. To start with, you want to build a couple of items on this grid. This will be a basic assembler, a basic refinery, probably a small cargo container, and you probably want to transfer the survival kit from this grid onto the large one. These will function the same, however, you probably want to disassemble this ship entirely to move it to this grid. As you can see, I've queued up a survival kit, a basic refinery, a basic assembler, and a small cargo container. And then shift click on this inventory, and that'll put everything in needed in production that is required to construct those blocks. I'm also going to drag crate ingots to the end of the queue, so these items will be crafted first. When placing these blocks, you'll see on the left and right hand side, they have these yellow connectors that are on the ship. These will allow these blocks to connect to other blocks next to them. This will be useful, as on this ship, you'll be able to drag things through different parts of the ship, and as the assembler and refinery are separate blocks, the assembler will be able to pull things from the refinery in order to craft items. So as there was a connector here, I'm going to replace the assembler next to it with its own connector. However, as you can see, the connector is facing towards me, which is not what we want. As you can see in the top right, there's a little cube that shows you the buttons you need to press to rotate blocks. So if I press delete, that will rotate the block to the left. I'm pressing paste down to rotate it back. So I click now, it will place in that orientation. I do the same for the refinery. Press 6 to get the refinery up because it's on my hotbar. You can see the refinery is already in the correct direction, but by pressing paste down, I can rotate it around and press delete to rotate it the other way, but I want it placed that way. And finally, I've got the cargo container. Generally, cargo containers will have connectors on every side. So as there was a connector on this side of the refinery, I'm just going to place it here, or not. I don't have any interior plates. One of the advantages of building these blocks is that the assembler and the refinery are much quicker than the survival kit. Another advantage is that the survival kit can't craft small steel tubes which are required for the cargo container. Shit. I think it should be noted you definitely shouldn't do that. After a very long time, I have successfully welded all these up. Ignore the fact that the wind turbine isn't as high as before. That's, nothing happened, don't worry. Now that I have the assembler and the refinery, I now want to finish off my cargo container. So I'm going to add that to my build planner by right-clicking on it. So I need 19 steel tubes. So if I shift right-click on the basic refinery, that'll add it to the production of the assembler. Problem is, the assembler doesn't have any resources at the moment. Unlike the survival kit, you don't need to put recipes in the refinery. Just anything that goes in there will automatically be turned into resources. It is also much faster and generates much more resources than the survival kit. There we go. There's our cargo container. So now I can put all this stuff in the cargo container, free up my inventory for more stone mining, apparently. In order to fully get rid of this ship, we will need to build an O2H2 generator on our station that connects to our survival kit. So let's go to the O2H2 generator, middle click to queue it up. Middle clicking is actually what the small ship H2O2 generator on. So by going back to it, clicking on it and click the big square and middle clicking, that will add the large ship version of it to the build planner. And then you can right click to remove the other one. I'm going to shift right click on this cargo container to add that to the production queue. As you can see, all of those have been added to the queue. I just need to go and get this stone to build them. The main issue we have at the moment actually is we don't have enough power, so it might be time to build some more wind turbines. There we have it, O2H2 generator. So if I grab the ice from here, this will start generating oxygen and hydrogen, which will allow me to refill my hydrogen from the survival kit. And now we have pretty much no need for this starting ship. So now that we've got our basic base built, what's next? The next thing to build will probably be a rover. Using a rover, we could travel around the world to find the resources we need, such as resources of iron, which will cut out the middleman of mining stone and convert it into random ingots, and ice to refill our hydrogen tanks, and eventually power our hydrogen ships. We can also get some ice from mining snow, however, preferably we want to find ice. Now, it looks like we're not too lucky. I can't see any big lakes of ice near us, so we might have to focus on finding iron first so we can build a flying ship. However, I will save building ships for the next video, where our focus will be building our first rover to go out in the world to find resources.